What is up everyone, Munching Orange here, and welcome to another Pokemon Sword and Shield discussion video. So this will kind of be a roundup of just my thoughts on the game overall, the expansion pass, and I guess my hopes for the future of Pokemon, because I think there's a lot that they can take away from Sword and Shield, maybe improve upon. There's a lot of things that maybe they should keep out of the next game. So we're going to discuss all of that in a more unscripted, off-the-dome, just analysis of Pokemon Sword and Shield as a whole. So hope you guys are excited. Let's jump into it. I guess first, let's talk about my expectations coming into Sword and Shield, and even further back to Pokemon being on a home console, that is the Nintendo Switch. I think a lot of people had big expectations. I know that the term open world Pokemon is thrown around a lot, and especially with Breath of the Wild kind of setting the bar for what a Switch game could be like. And then of course, when it came to Pokemon, I think a lot of fans were expecting something similar. A breath of fresh air, you could say, in the Pokemon franchise. And of course, open world is something that a lot of people wanted to see, myself included. I actually made a video kind of going over the map of the Galar region and speculated we might get to choose what gym you want to go to in what order based off the layout of the map and the wild area, which I think had been revealed at that point. But of course, we ended up getting the same old linear formula with more of an emphasis on the gym challenge. So I guess we can start there. Let's talk about the wild area. I mean, it was definitely the most hyped feature, I would say. Actually getting to explore openly, go wherever you want, and catch whatever Pokemon you see. But there's definitely a lot that could have been improved. One big thing is, of course, the weather just randomly switching as you're, zipping around the wild area sometimes looked kind of bad. I don't know how to phrase it better, but it was just very jarring when you're biking through a grassy plain and then suddenly a sandstorm sweeps in out of nowhere. I feel that it's more a problem with the size of the wild area not being quite as big as I thought it would be. Like, there's essentially just two big chunks to it, the one in front of Motostoke and then the other section in front of Hammerlock, like leading to the daycare and all that. If the wild area had been bigger, then I guess it would have made more sense to only have sandstorms in like the desert dusty bowl area, I think it was called, and like you can have snow closer to like the higher peaks. A lot of this was improved in the DLC. Of course, the Isle of Armor had its own wild area, which I immediately fell in love with. Like, the first thing I did when I got to the Isle of Armor was just start exploring. I even ignored the story just because having the free camera movement and so many little nooks and crannies to explore, that's what really captivated me when it came to the DLC. And the Crown Tundra improved upon that even more. I haven't had that feeling of just wanting to go out and explore every corner of the world in a Pokemon game in such a long time, because they've just been so dang linear the last few generations. And the base wild area in Sword and Shield was pretty linear as well, so I'm glad that they did improve upon that with the DLC, and I really hope that they continue to improve upon that in the future titles. Like, I really hope that the wild area wasn't just a one-off thing, because it kind of feels at times like it's a testing ground or kind of like a beta for what open world Pokemon could be like. I feel that every route in the next generation should be open like the wild area, or more specifically like the Crown Tundra or Isle of Armor, where you do have laid out paths that you can follow, but you don't necessarily have to stick to them. Like in the Crown Tundra, of course, as you play through the story, they kind of guide you to where you want to go, but you could see like the graveyard in the distance and go head off and explore that if you wanted to. Not to mention the fact that you can only move around your camera freely in the wild area. I feel that that should be a thing in the next generation. Like, every route should have free camera movement. Even in the cities, I guess it would be a little bit more difficult, but I'm sure they can figure it out. I mean, most other modern games have free camera movement throughout the whole game, so I hope that in the future Pokemon does embrace that openness of the wild area and maybe even bring some of those concepts to cities, because for example, Hammerlock, Motostoke, I thought were pretty good cities to explore and walk around, and it would have only been greater if you could move around the camera to explore every nook and cranny. You could even like hide items or TMs in alleyways that you couldn't see unless you rotate the camera, So to wrap it up on the wild area, I really didn't think it was bad. It just maybe wasn't implemented perfectly, and really hope that they improve upon it in the next generation and not scrap it like they have some other features. But like I said, it does feel at times like they improved upon it with the DLCs, and so maybe this is a beta for what Pokemon games could be in the future. If you put a bunch of smaller wild areas next to each other, you could make a region just like that. I mean, the Crown Tundra even had a town that you could fully explore with the rotating camera and everything. So it's definitely possible to build a Pokemon game that is more open like that. And I really hope they do, because I think a lot of people want to see it. And a lot of people did enjoy the wild area despite its flaws. I'm not going to get into the graphics just yet. That is definitely coming further down the video. But I've actually done a discussion back before the games came out on whether graphics really matter that much in Pokemon. That's different from animations, by the way, which I guess we can get into next. Now, we already know the move animations, like in battle, are pretty lackluster. They are recycled basically from the 3DS games. And not just the moves, but the Pokemon idle animations, like when they're just standing around in battle. They are not the greatest sometimes. I mean, it worked back when they were 2D sprites. They didn't have to be as animated, but you could still get this feeling that they are living creatures. Whereas now, I'm not all that good at explaining it, but I know that they could do much better, especially since we've seen in past games, like I'm talking over 10 years ago now, had custom animations for each Pokemon when they went to go do certain attacks. You would actually see them run up and kick or punch, when I was really hoping that coming over to the Switch, having a more powerful console, that was one of the things that they would improve, is the animations in battle, making the Pokemon feel like they're actually engaged in battle rather than just standing there. Blastoise doesn't even use his cannons, dude. I don't know, that seems kind of minor, but at the same time, those little details are what would make the world feel so much more real and engaging. Just make them run up if they need to do a punch, instead of just hopping in place and a little PNG of a punch comes out. Like, we're not on the Game Boy anymore, you know? You can make these Pokemon feel like the living creatures they're supposed to be and interact more with each other. I didn't really touch upon it, but in the wild area, another thing I felt they could have added is more Pokemon actually interacting with each other rather than just you, the player character, as you walk on by. Like, have them actually interact with each other and make the world feel more alive. I feel like I keep saying that. I'm probably going to keep saying it, but I guess that was my biggest hope coming into Sword and Shield, was seeing the wild area in the trailers, you know, just made me feel that they were going to make a world that felt more lived in. And in the end, it just felt kind of empty and shallow at times. While we're on the topic of animations though, what the heck is going on with the Pokemon following behind you though?
You're too slow!
That is something every Pokemon fan has wanted since they had it back in Heart Gold. And I know they had it in Pokemon Yellow technically, maybe in some mini games in some of the other generations, but Heart Gold was the one that really popularized the feature of having your Pokemon walking behind you. And in Sword and Shield, we ended up getting the worst version of this feature we've ever had. There's so many Pokemon that are either too slow or too fast at times, and they catch up and then they slow down, and it just doesn't make any sense. Some of the Pokemon that should be flying are walking instead for some reason, or then they start flying just to slow back down on their feet, and it's a mess, okay? Everybody knows walking animations are basically a joke for most Pokemon. It was not implemented correctly at all, and if you're gonna put it in the game at all, then at least make sure that it works, you know? I didn't really even get into the Pokemon themselves, because I do love like 99% of the designs of the Pokemon in Sword and Shield. That, along with the music, is something that Pokemon has definitely not dropped the ball on. Even if we might get less Pokemon per generation, almost all of them are very well thought out in terms of design and like how they work in the world. Their Pokedex descriptions and lore and all that is phenomenal. That is definitely the one thing still keeping the franchise afloat. Okay, this video is not just gonna be me complaining about Sword and Shield. Yes, there are some things that I didn't like, but there's also some stuff that I did like. So let's do a little bit of a positive twist and talk about the story. What story, you may be wondering? I'm wondering too, because most of the time, your character actually isn't involved in the story, but I thought that it fit for the Galar region, since the main focus is the whole gym challenge. The whole time you keep hearing about the unbeatable champion, the numero uno, and since the Galar region, everyone knows Leon is the greatest trainer, they make him handle all the busy work. And I do like that they made that the main focus. You're just a kid looking for glory in Pokemon battles. When you finally prove to yourself and the whole region that you really are a great Pokemon trainer, then they say, okay, maybe this kid can help us out here. And, you know, you take on the Eternatus, which, I mean, that wasn't exactly my favorite Pokemon story, but I didn't think it was necessarily bad, the whole lore of the Galar region. Although I still don't know what the heck Eternatus is. Where did this thing come from? All we know is that it's the source of all Dynamaxx energy, but like, where did this thing come from? What the heck is it? Why does it turn into a giant hand? Maybe I'm asking too many questions. I mean, most Pokemon games have a lot of loose ends like that, but my point is that a lot of people don't like the fact that the game is so focused on the gym challenge and not necessarily the story that's going on behind the scenes, but I kind of like that change, and it definitely made the gym challenge itself feel that much more epic, since in Galar, you know, we have these giant stadiums built for competition, Dynamaxx, Gigantamax going on, which we're definitely going to get into in a bit. I did feel that they did a good job shining the spotlight on the stadium battles. I didn't like the fact that the Victory Road was really lame, but I did like that it wasn't your traditional Pokemon League with the Elite Four, and instead we had a tournament versus the friends that we've gotten to know throughout the journey. And speaking of those friends, we gotta talk about my man Hop, the greatest rival of all time. Okay, I'm kidding. All right, calm down. I didn't think Hop was as bad as I think a lot of people think. Definitely annoying, like there's no doubt about that. It got real tiring hearing the same thing over and over. But in the end, I feel like he had a pretty nice complete arc where he realizes that he shouldn't be chasing after his brother, you know, he can do his own thing and decides that he wants to be a Pokemon professor instead. But I did like his art overall, and especially the fact that my dude stuck with that little Wooloo all the way through. Even in the Galarian Star Tournament, he still uses that same Dubwool. I guess I have a bit of a soft spot for Hop. I don't think he was quite as bad as people make him out to be, and definitely not as bad as Hau. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about Marnie, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna like this, but I don't get why anyone cares about Marnie. She's got some quirky moments, but aside from that, I just never found her story all that memorable. Like, I think most people just like her for the outfit. Same with her brother, actually. His gym was so disappointing, dude. That cutscene, well, the build-up was pretty cool. Walking through Spike Month and facing off against Team Yell. Then you get to the end after all that hype building up, and you see Pierre's on the stage. He whips out the microphone, and silence. There's no voice, nothing. Even Roxy back in Burbank's gym, Black and White 2, had lyrics to her song in the background. Like, I know Pokemon's most likely never gonna have voice acting, but they could have done something special just for Pierre's gym. I mean, the guy doesn't even have a Dynamaxx Pokemon. Like, that could have been his special thing, you know? Speaking of Team Yell, though, I actually like the way they subverted our expectations with that one. Like, I was totally down for them switching up the formula there and not making it the generic evil team for the sake of being evil that we've had in almost every other game. That's not to say there wasn't a villain, though, and I gotta say Chairman Rose might be one of my favorites recently. He wasn't your typical villain by any means. Actually, throughout the story, I mean, I did expect him to be the twist villain at the end, but it wasn't necessarily because of the story or like foreshadowing. It was more so the fact that there wasn't really any villain in sight throughout the whole game. So it was pretty clear Leon wasn't gonna randomly flip on us. So Chairman Rose was really the only one that could have been a villain. So in terms of a twist at the end, it didn't exactly work, but I did like Rose as a character, and specifically at the end. I would honestly compare him to someone like Elon Musk, who is trying to do some good, but is sometimes misunderstood or maybe crosses the line, and Rose definitely went too far over the line basically going paranoid and thinking that the worst is coming in the future. Like, we don't even know how far in the future the Dynamaxx energy would have ran out, but that's essentially what happened. Is he summoned the ultra evil space chicken because he wanted more Dynamaxx energy and he needed it now. But even after you defeat him, he admits that he was wrong, and I feel like he always had a good motivation behind him, which I guess most Pokemon villains have had a justification to their evil, or maybe not justification's the wrong word, but you know, their motivations make sense, and with Chairman Rose, I thought it made sense too. We might as well just jump into Dynamaxx right now, because that is definitely another big topic of Sword and Shield. I'm really torn about Dynamaxxing as a mechanic, because on one hand, I feel that it's really cool that every Pokemon now gets a chance to shine. You know, in the past, not everyone got Mega Evolutions or signature Z moves, and actually even with Dynamaxxing, every Pokemon can technically go Giant, but not all of them have like signature max moves or, you know, the Gigantamax forms, which I do really like. It's another thing that fits with the theme and the story of the Galar region. It's all about Dynamaxing and the spectacle of Pokemon battles, which is why they make them go big, but they did a really bad job of explaining how it even works. Like, I still don't know if Dynamaxx Pokemon are holograms or not, and I'm sure there's a ton of dialogue in the game that explains it, but then it gets contradicted with another piece of dialogue, or you go and read up on the Pokedex and it tells you that it's capable of plowing down buildings, and I'm like, dude, shouldn't one max water move just drown everyone in the stadium then? Like, how do they... I mean, it has to be holograms, right? I don't know if I'm the only one that's bothered by the fact that we just don't even know at the end of the game. Like, that's something that I would have loved to see explored more, or just explained more clearly. And like I said, I do enjoy what it adds to battling, that every Pokemon now gets the chance to be the big guy. I mean, I'm not that into competitive battling. I don't know if the mechanic is actually good or not. I just really don't want to see it in the future games for the reasons I stated before. It's just going to be weird to have to explain. For example, if we do get Sinnoh remakes, is there just Dynamaxx energy in the Sinnoh region now when there wasn't before? Is it a new timeline where now Eternatus has spread its Dynamaxx seed throughout every region? I don't know. It's weird, and I don't really want to see the Sinnoh region littered with Dynamaxx dens, especially not Dynamaxx dens, dude. I did not like the raid battles at all, at least in the base game. Dynamaxx Adventures definitely did a lot to fix the issues I had with max raid battles, but in the base game, in the original wild area, I did not like doing raids at all, man. From online issues to the Pokemon having that stupid shield that you gotta take down, and it just adds more annoyance than fun or challenge to it. I really hope they ditch this one. There's a lot of features that come and go in Pokemon games, and Gigantamaxing, while it does have some cool designs, is nowhere near as great as Mega Evolution once was. I don't even care that only certain Pokemon could Mega. It just was such a better concept. While we've pretty much covered everything in the main game now, aside from some smaller features like the camping and curry cooking, yeah, it's always nice to get to play and interact with your Pokemon up close and personal. I'm sure we'll get another version of that in future games too, as long as there's no cooking curry, because, I mean, curry's delicious in real life, but not so fun to cook in Pokemon. The music was great, absolute bangers. Like, that's one thing Pokemon never disappoints with, man. The music, whoever is handling that, has been killing it in the last few generations. Most of the battle themes are really good. I love Hop's theme, the cheerfulness of it, and it really fits for his character. Same with Marnie's theme, and Peony, dude, in the DLC has got one of the best themes. Oh, Chairman Rose, dude, when he goes evil on you, that song was amazing. So in the music department, Pokemon, you got it going. Just hopefully they don't jinx it. That is definitely one of the most solid things they've had going for him. I actually felt like the routes were a bit lacking in Galar. Like, there weren't that many distinct route themes. In terms of the most memorable tracks from Sword and Shield, it's definitely the battle themes. Like the gym battle music, oh my. When the Pokemon Gigantamax is and you hear the crowd cheering in the background, dude, it gets me pumped up. But I can't say the same for the routes, and especially the wild area. Maybe it's just right now I can't think of that many route themes off the top of my head, when I can think of a lot of battle themes that really stuck out to me. So I guess it was kind of 50-50 in the end. There's a lot of songs I liked, and then there's some that weren't really bad, but they just didn't really stand out to me. So it's time for what you've all been waiting for. Let's talk about the Crown Tundra and Isle of Armor expansion pass. In terms of it just existing, the fact that for the first time ever we got DLC for a Pokemon game, way better than having to replay through an Ultra version, which is basically the same game, just to get to like some bonus endgame content. Okay, honestly, the post-game of Ultra Sun and Moon was pretty good, but you had to replay through all of Alola basically the same as before just to get to it. So in that respect, I do like the fact that we now got the expansion pass. You know, we don't have to replay through all of Galar just to get that juicy post-game content. And when I say juicy, I'm mainly talking about the Crown Tundra, because honestly, the Isle of Armor should have been the free post-game instead of that garbage we got with Swordwood and Shieldbert, which I guess I'll talk about soon enough. But then the Crown Tundra, I felt like, was actually more the bulk of the expansion pass, and maybe could have been its own standalone thing for $20. Okay, this might just be my own theory, it's not confirmed at all, but I have a feeling that the Isle of Armor was originally planned to be the post-game of Sword and Shield, and at some point, Pokemon Company or Game Freak themselves decided that they were going to have DLC and the expansion pass be a thing, so they decided to hold off on the Isle of Armor until then, and so they had to scramble to come up with some kind of post-game, and that's why we got the Swordward and Shieldbert story, because I don't think this is an understatement in saying that that is probably the worst post-game that we have had in any Pokemon game, probably. Like, you literally just run around all the stadiums you've already been to before and take down Dynamaxx Pokemon that aren't even all that tough, not to mention the story and, like, the characters themselves of Swordward and Shieldbert. They made for good memes, alright? That's about all that they are good for, to be honest. The Crown Tundra is a completely different story. Like I said, I feel that the Crown Tundra could have actually been just its own standalone DLC, and I probably would have paid for it. The Isle of Armor, maybe not so much because there wasn't quite as much content, so let's just dive into that one first. I love the Isle of Armor in terms of like the map itself. Same with the Crown Tundra, just being able to explore with the free camera movement and all the little hidden areas. I love that about it, but the story, not so much. And it all starts with Kubfu, a legendary Pokemon capable of evolving. Sounds really awesome just saying it out loud like that, but when it came down to actually putting it in the game, I feel like it made no sense. Like, why or how does Kubfu even exist? Is it only on the Isle of Armor? And why does it require a man-made scroll? Does that mean the Towers of Water and Darkness are gonna have to be in every single Pokemon game from here on out? Maybe that's just me, but I felt that Kubfu should have just stayed as the cute and cuddly Kubfu and not added the whole confusion with the two Urshifus. But then there wouldn't have been a Gigantamax Urshifu, which is a huge part of the Isle of Armor, and at the end, I just don't like Kubfu all that much because he's just a little Kung Fu Panda reject. The actual content of the Isle of Armor, aside from that, wasn't all that great either. We had the Max Mushrooms, which are a pain in the ass to collect, and I still haven't Gigantamaxed a whole bunch of my Pokemon just because I don't feel like finding those Max Mushrooms. The Diglets, oh my gosh, that took me so long, even though it totally shouldn't have. And the reward for it wasn't all that cool either. You get Alolan forms, which if you played Sun and Moon, you know, they're not all that special anymore. I think my main problem with the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra actually is the fact that there's barely any battles. It is difficult to balance trainers' levels when it comes to the DLC. I mean, they could have had it scaling to depending on where you are in the game, which I think is what happens if you decide to go to the DLC before beating the game. But I just hope that in the future they can figure it out, because not having any trainers or characters other than like the ones related to the story or the random NPCs that give you apricots, it just felt really empty in the expansion pass. I was really hoping to have some type of more proper post-game like the past generations with like super high level trainers and challenging battles, I guess, but that's a whole nother topic. The difficulty in Pokemon games, I'm not gonna get into in this video. I just really hope one day we do get some type of challenge mode like we had back in Black and White 2. Now let's talk about the Crown Tundra. Let's end things off on a good note, because I actually did like part 2 of the expansion pass a whole lot more than the Isle of Armor. From the Galarian legendary birds, that whole side quest having to chase them down was so cool and so fun, and it really brought back the wonder of like roaming legendary Pokemon we haven't had in a while. Calyrex in terms of look is like a 0 next to Kubfu, but this dude actually had an engaging, creative story to him that actually made me like the Pokemon so much more than I liked Kubfu. I'm sure everyone had a shocked Pikachu face the first time they saw Calyrex lift up Peony with his psychic powers. That was really cool and kind of bizarre and unexpected from Pokemon. The Regis are back, including 2 new Regis, which I actually really like. Not as big of a fan of the actual quest to unlock them, just because it's so much easier and dumbed down compared to the Regi quest from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Even though a lot of people in the comments said they struggled to get that first Regirock puzzle where you gotta like whistle in front of the door, still pales in comparison to having to like translate Braille and figure out these super obscure puzzles like having Relicanth and Wailord in your party. It was still fun hunting down the Regis, just I guess I have a bit of bias from my nostalgia of those old school games. We got the Swords of Justice hunting down the footprints. That was a huge improvement from the Diglets on the Isle of Armor, because there was actually no set locations for the footprints. Just made it a whole less of a pain in the hoof, because they're horses, you know. And then Keldeo too, that was a nice surprise. I actually ran into that little curry pot and was wondering what that would be for. Little did I know, it was actually to summon Keldeo. All the new Pokemon that they added in were really cool. I know it sucks that we don't have the National Dex anymore. I was honestly never that upset with the fact that they cut Pokemon, but it is weird that even when you beat the whole game, not every Pokemon can be found in the Dex. Like, at least see their entries in the Pokedex, because there's so many legendaries that you can get in Dynamaxx Adventures, and you can't even read their, like, entry in the Pokedex, which is really weird to me. Overall, I feel that the price wouldn't have hurt as bad if Sword and Shield had felt like proper next-generation home console games, instead of an upscaled version of a 3DS game, which is what I think a lot of people sadly ended up viewing Sword and Shield like. In the end, Sword and Shield just feel like games that have a lot to show, but not necessarily tell, if that makes sense. Vast areas to explore, but not a lot to make them interesting. And these are all things that I hope to see improved in the next generation, or even just the next games, because Sinnoh remakes at this point seem pretty likely. That is definitely a topic for another day. Thank you all so much for watching this one. Let me know your thoughts on Sword and Shield down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this sort of discussion video, leave a like down below. I'll bring you guys some more of these, just off the dome, giving my opinions on the Pokemon world. And until the next one, goodbye.